Dukes Nation, this is your home for all things Duquesne University athletics, whether it's basketball or football or soccer or lacrosse or volleyball, track and field, golf, swimming, you name it, everything in between. If it's happening at UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse, Arthur J. Rooney Athletic Field, or anywhere our Dukes play, you're going to hear about it here. Hello and welcome, Dukes fans. You are looking at co-producer Rudy Longarini inside the worldwide headquarters and studios of All Dukes Sports Talk. I'm Bob Healy III, joined as always by Nick Frost, and we are uniting Dukes Nation for a conversation on all things Duquesne University athletics. So without further ado, let's get to it, and let's go Dukes! All right, Dukes Nation, welcome back to another episode of All Dukes Sports Talk, and you were just looking at the locker room of the Duquesne Dukes. Well, I guess it's the visitors' locker room at George Mason that was being occupied by the Dukes, and that's the aftermath of probably the best win of the Drew Joyce era. Duquesne upsetting George Mason on the road earlier this week, and then coming back home to the friendly confines of UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse and taking care of business against George Washington. The Dukes are on a 3-game winning streak in men's basketball, and it has us all thinking incredible things as they knock on the door of the top 4 in the double bye in the Atlantic 10 tournament coming up at PPG Paints Arena in March. I'm Bob Healy, joined as always by Rudy Longarini and Nick Frost. It's All Dukes Sports Talk, and it's probably the greatest time to be a Dukes fan right now because it's starting to get really, really exciting, Nick, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's not just us thinking that this team is bringing back memories of 2024. Some George Mason fans on Twitter were tweeting about how it was reminiscent of the loss that Duquesne put on them 2 years ago at home. So, this team could have that special touch that we thought they might have. I mean, the talent has definitely been there.
Yeah, the Dukes, it's again, like you said, it's very, very reminiscent because although that was an 0-5 start in 24, this was kind of a mixed bag. The team hadn't started playing its best basketball until right around this time of year. And for whatever reason, we own George Mason on the road. That was a team that came into that game. This is back on Wednesday, the 4th. We're recording this on Saturday, the 7th. Normally we record on Sunday, but Super Bowl's tomorrow, so we're doing it tonight. And Mason came into that game 20-2, 8-1 in the A-10, trailing only nationally ranked St. Louis. Mason hadn't lost a home conference game in 2 years, and the Dukes came in there and handled them in front of 3,100 fans. Awesome stuff. And then the Dukes come home, and in a back-and-forth, very exciting game against George Washington this afternoon, winners 88-86. Rudy, before I go to our special guest, what do you have to say about all this right now? I mean, this is the best part, right? This is what makes it fun.
Well, we were lucky to have 2 years ago a winning streak after about the midway point after we went 0-5, and we're now on a 3-game winning streak. It looks like but the games coming up are going to be tough. Our last game before conference play is going to be against St. Louis, but I don't want to minimize what we've accomplished over the last 3 games, and it seems that we're getting our footing, and Drew is pushing all the right buttons. And major shout out to Alex Williams and the crew that went through on winning the game against George Mason on Wednesday. That's I will add more later on, but that's what I have to start with.
So the Dukes now at, again, 6-5, just outside the double bye of the Atlantic 10 Championship. St. Joseph's, as you can see there, 1 game ahead. The Dukes are tied with Davidson and Duquesne and a half game ahead of Rhode Island. And joining us, very, very special guest. This is a man many basketball fans around the country are familiar with. This is a national basketball writer, Tristan Freeman. You know him on X or Twitter at HoopsNut351. He's a site expert for FanSighted's Busting Brackets. He's also a contributor for the Field of 68 and Sleepers Media. Tristan Freeman, hey man, it's a real honor to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us on All Duke Sports Talk.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's an awesome time for Duquesne basketball with 3-game win streak, and happy to talk about what's been going well for them.
And Tristan, you are from Pittsburgh, and you're based here, right?
Yeah, I lived in Pittsburgh all my life. Grew up as a Pitt Panther fan, but have the opportunity to
well,
cover.
we'll let that go.
Yeah,
We
well,
won't
I
hold it
mean,
against you.
Overlook
well,
it, yeah.
well, I mean, look, right now you'd rather be a Duquesne fan than a Pitt fan. Let's be honest. So that's extra reason why I'm glad to be on this kind of pot.
You know, Nick, you mentioned this a couple weeks ago on an episode where this is like a great opportunity for the Dukes, given the struggles of the Panthers, to sort of like grab the Pittsburgh sports scene. Although it's the Penguins' world here right now, because then the Pens went on a heater, but we had so much bad news for so long in Pittsburgh sports, and the Dukes, were like, especially 2 years ago, were kind of the biggest story in college basketball for about 12 to 24 hours. And in Pittsburgh, of course, you can see by the front cover of the local paper behind me, as Zoom tries to move its camera all around me now with this new feature I hate. But anyway, yeah, now, I mean, hey, guys, 2026, and here we are again, right? Enjoying this and maybe thinking that it's time for the Dukes to take over Pittsburgh sports again. For someone who suffered through, not all 47 years, because I wasn't that old, but through all the losing and all the struggles, it's amazing still to see us, competing like this and winning games. Tristan, your first season covering the team, I think, was the 6-win season, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, that was the first time I covered Duquesne up close and really honed in on all their games. And it was the freshman backcourt of Jackie Johnson and Primo Spears that you thought could have been 4-year tandem, but in the portal world, rosters are never guaranteed. And what happens next? You get Day Grant and you get Jimmy Clark, and that ends up leading you to an A-10 banner and tournament appearance.
All right, now speaking of Day Grant and Jimmy Clark, I know Rudy was kind of hinting at this on either our last episode or the prior one, about we kind of right now are enjoying a bit of like Day and Jimmy Light, by way of Terrence Skinyard and Jimmy Williams. Your thoughts on that? I mean, they're not the same kind of players, but I mean, gosh, Terrence Skinyard puts up 27 points today, 5 boards, 6 of 7 free throws, hits 3 threes. He's 9 of 13 from the field, 2 steals. I mean, that's the kind of stuff where we've talked about since we've been having this show, right? That we're just waiting for those next guys. Because we started this show the year after that great tournament run, to try to capitalize on all this great Duquesne basketball fandom and fever. And we're just looking for those next studs to take over a game. Does Duquesne, Tristan, finally have those guys now? Terrence Skinyard, Jimmy Williams, and hell, Alex Williams, who went off the other day. Do they have the star power now to maybe win this thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, last year they were around 500 team with Trey Dinkins leading them in scoring. And, last year's team was a good defensive squad, but they didn't have enough firepower. This year, they're one of the top offenses in the league. And while Gingrich and Williams, aren't as good defensively as Grant and Jimmy Clark was, they're probably better offensively, at least in terms of efficiency. Jimmy was a very good efficient scorer at South Florida, but didn't have the volume or the role he has now. And he's been absolutely fantastic for them. And he was pretty good in the George Mason game without Gingrich too. And then Gingrich, we saw this against Davidson in the overtime game with the historic win at that arena for the program. He can go off for 20 points in a 10-minute span. And that's what Duquesne is going to need, because you don't have too many other potent scorers on the roster with sort of the rotation, shuffling around, and John Hughley not having this big a role. But Gingrich and Williams are more than capable of shouldering the load offensively, and are just really consistently good at it. And that's why Duquesne's been able to win these sort of shootout like contests.
By the way, I thought Terrence Skinyard was robbed of a block. I'm looking at the box score, and I remember the block I thought he made, even being undersized for the play and then taking it the other way to draw a foul, which was having him, he was getting the crowd into it and got them off their feet. I thought that was a block. Yeah,
Did they credit that a steal?
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe, yeah, good point. But yeah, Gingrich, he's starting to feel it, I think, right? 34 minutes. He's our guy. And what a difference a year makes, because Trey Dinkins was on the floor again today. But he was playing for George Washington, and Dinkins transferred. Dinkins is now on his, if you don't include JUCO, he's on his third team. So I guess 4 or 5 if you're including JUCO. And no disrespect to Trey, it's how this goes now. But Dinkins only 11 minutes today, 2 points, just both free throws. And by the way, George Washington only played 7 guys. I mean, that's how many my 7th grade team played today when we lost to South Fayette. You know, it's so I mean, it's 7's a little bit low, but hey, that's what they were doing. It's incredible, right? You just 1 year goes by, and we were so frustrated last season, and now here we are again. Nick, I mean, this is you're the guy who was saying like we need like to capitalize on this. I mean, how frustrating it is, right? Do you think they've turned the corner?
Yeah, and I the reason I thought that is because the defense suddenly was coming back. Up until today's game, that had been true. I mean, that was what led us in the big upset at George Mason and the win against Rhode Island. And then today, I mean, despite George Washington only having 7 guys play, and really offensively, it was number 7, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name, so I'm going to let Tristan handle that later on. And Luke Hunger, number 33. Those guys, I mean, those two in particular, scoring 35 collectively. We didn't really have much of an answer for. And it looked like number 7 was actually kind of hobbled a little bit. Every time he subbed out, he went straight to the bike. And I didn't think that he'd be able to keep coming, and he kept coming strong. We didn't have many answers for him. But as a whole, like Tristan mentioned, our offense can win games too. That happened here. Ginyard actually was really quiet in the first half of this one. I don't think he had many points at halftime, but he came alive in the second half. Jimmy Williams led us in the first half and then didn't have to contribute as much in the second half offensively. But he's always there, and I could hear the coaching staff on GW become a little irate with their players about leaving them open for the shooters open for threes and going under screens. I think the most ironic part of the game was George Washington called a play called and one. We stole the ball and then ended up getting an and one. That was with about 9 minutes left in the game. I feel like that was kind of the time where it looked like Duquesne was going to take hold of the game, and we did sort of had a lead for the majority of the way after that, but it was always like a one score game, really back and forth up until 3 or 4 minutes left is when we stretched it out. Really thought we were going to be winning this one comfortably, and it just, I don't know, the free throws and some really incredible shots from George Washington kept them in it, and then they almost stole one from us at the end. I'm sure Coach, I didn't hear the post-game presser yet, but I'm sure Coach Joyce had something to say about whether he thought that shot was missing or making at the end of the game.
No, he was saying hope. He used the word hope, and in the interview after the game on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, that would have been a heartbreaker. But I love the defensive effort against Mason. I thought Cam Crawford was just a lockdown dude in the Mason game. Rudy, I know you love when we tighten up on defense because, like Nick was saying, that was a big difference maker 2 years ago. Zach Weiss has been writing about that, actually, our buddy from On3, about the defensive switch they see it sort of turned on. I know you're a big fan of that, Rudy, when they tighten up.
Well, yeah, obviously, you got to be balanced. You can't be all scoring and no defense, and you can't be all defense and no scoring. So, but we got some stops, particularly in the Mason game. I mean, going down the stretch, I mean, what did we outscore them? I can't remember what it was.
I think we had like a 10 or 11 nothing run to end the game or something like that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but they were, and today, when they were trying to get into the game, when we got up by 9 and a couple that allowed us to get over by 9, because a couple of those shots, I mean, literally were rolling around the rim with them that They're very unlucky that George Washington didn't get any of those buckets when they were rolling around. It looked like they were, right there, and it just didn't go down. And we got the rebounds. Nexus, I think, got one, but yeah, defensive stops, dude. Their zone is starting to pay off. And Drew is saying, we're getting better at it. And in the in the interview afterwards, he's saying, we got a couple of days rest. We had 3 games in 8 days or whatever, and we're going to have some rest. We need it, and going on to the next, that he believes that they can improve defensively and offensively. So there you have it.
Yeah, the Dukes sort of go on an Olympic break here for a week. They don't play until February 14th at 4 p.m. at St. Bonnie's. I did hear the same sort of post-game comments. At least I heard the ones on Instagram where Coach was telling the team, sometimes you got to gut one out. He was proud of the effort. He loved the points off turnovers, taking care of the ball. Dukes did lead 21-6 on points off turnovers, 14-7 on fast break points, 44-30 on points in the paint. So it's actually kind of amazing it was as close as it was. Tristan, what are we leaving out here about this Dukes team that we haven't analyzed yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the rotations that have been used by Coach Drew, I mean, you saw a scenario where Netchoff played at the 5 instead of Dave Dixon in the final few minutes. Alex Williams now getting 25 minutes a game at the 4 spot, which allows them to do different things. And after the great offensive story he had this season, John Hughley, his impact has diminished, and we've seen some rough stretches from him in some of these games. And a lot of coaches in the past don't have their star transfer play through it because they have to. But Coach Drew is saying, no, we're going to have defense first lineups, and if you're not a good fit with it, then so be it. And him playing Brandon Hall over Senior Crawford, Crawford's shot just hasn't been going for him in league play. Hall getting 30 minutes in this game and hitting a couple of key shots in the second half, to sort of keep them ahead. That's huge as well. So I think just the coaching performances that Coach Drew has had, in Star League play, I think that's probably the best thing for the program, not only now but in the future as he goes up against some of these other bright coaches. I mean, he out coached Tony Skinn, who's like a national, candidate to sort of get a bigger job in the future. And then this is, second year in a row that Coach Drew has outdone him.
Yeah, I did not see the Brandon Hall thing coming. I mean, Brandon Hall, and up until Loyola Chicago, had played like a dozen minutes was like the high for him, all season. And now he's getting 20 plus, 30 plus. He played 37 at George Mason. He's had some big shots for them. Like he's arriving in a way that like we saw DeMichael arrive,
he's coming on,
and Netchus arrive, and it's just the parallels are very similar. I know I'm going to the extreme, but yeah, he's coming. I just didn't see it coming. The Dukes got this guy from Howard College. We didn't know much about him, honestly. I mean, he missed the 24-25 season anyway at Howard from rehabbing from an injury he got the year before. And so, I mean, maybe this dude's just peaking, I mean, he's becoming a man, he's leaving behind the boy strength, getting the man strength. The guy's a redshirt junior by now. He's not small. I mean, he's 6'4" for a guard. Yeah, you got to like the guy. Nick, any thoughts on Brandon?
Yeah, and he's a competent guard with the ball in his hands too. It's another option to bring the ball up. I know pressure can be a killer for us. And was in the past this season, especially if Terrence or Jimmy are in foul trouble or out for the game. Right. That seemed like, okay, we don't really have anybody else who can initiate the offense. I'm not saying he's a pure point guard by any means, but he's able to bring it up with some pressure and I don't feel like we're definitely giving the ball away on that possession. Whereas our other options, Alex Williams, he's a great scorer, but if he's driving with a head of steam, he's not going to be able to stop, and that happened in the game today against GW too. And then we have Netchus and Dixon, both, good ball handlers for bigs, but they're not able to handle pressure if they're coming our way. So it's nice to have another option there. And I actually think he kind of has a little Sean Livingston touch to him too on his drives, where he's able to kind of hook and just get enough room to get a good shot off in the paint and using his full length. He's 6'4", but I feel like his arms are a little longer than a typical guard as well. So
Mhm.
that's kind of my thoughts on watching him drive and kind of have a little more finesse than I've seen out of guards in the paint. And Zach covered the recovery story for him along with Alex Williams, and I'm really happy to see that both guys who transferred and had injury issues have come back strong and are now being really important contributors to a successful team.
Just 3 turnovers in 67 minutes, I'm sorry, 1 turnover in 67 minutes in the last 2 games. Tristan, before we turn our attention to the rest of the Duke schedule coming up and maybe your thoughts like on favorites in the A10, remind us where we can read your stuff and how far does your coverage of college basketball go? You're obviously based in Pittsburgh, so you're covering the local teams. But beyond that, first of all, where can we get the stuff and what is the extent of your coverage? Are you covering sort of the whole nation, just mid-major, certain conferences? Help us out.
Yeah, no, I cover the entire sport, all 365 teams, all 31 conferences. I love college basketball in general, so I'll be up watching WCC, Big West hoops, and you can follow all that at Bustin' Brackets for my main site. You can also check out the Field of 68 Daily every Friday morning, and in Hoops HQ, Seth Davis's new website, and yeah, I cover top players, top leagues, top transfers in season, off season. Anytime there's something to talk about in college basketball, I'm usually there to either talk or write about it.
Yeah, there you are right there. We can actually sort you by articles that you're writing here. So this is on bustingbrackets.com, for example, it's part of the fan-sided network, and this is some of the work that Tristan Freeman does. Who's your favorite, by the way, still in the A10 as of right now? Have you changed, updated over the year, or did you pick St. Louis from the start? Are you sticking with them? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had St. Louis as you bring back Robbie Avila and you have some solid transfers, but the fact that Avila hasn't even had to do so much and they're still just so dominant with 6 double-digit scores. And the fact that Brady Dunlap, who was arguably the seventh or eighth man, he just goes off on a hot streak and leads them to a comeback win over Davidson this past weekend. Like I the question to me is whether or not St. Louis, loses a game in league play because they've just been that dominant. And we'll see what they do against VCU and George Mason. But you also saw them, nearly blow the game against Duquesne when Duquesne applied a ton of pressure. And there are weaknesses to exploit, but you have to be nearly perfect to beat the
Mm.
Billikens. They're that good all around, and quite frankly, their defense has been better than I thought because I thought that the belief was okay, you could beat them 90-88. They're not giving up 88 points when they're on focus. And I think it's been highly impressive what Josh Church has done, and they've done incredibly well with a lot. Like they have a guy, their own Brandon Hall and Amari McCautry, who was really good as a freshman, who's been a standout sophomore. He's been a breakout stud for them.
All right, who do you like getting the double bye out of the A10? And I'm not going to make you go completely cold here. I'm going to bring up the standings. St. Louis just had a 2-game advantage over Mason thanks to Duquesne. They seem to be obviously locked in, if not officially. Obviously, you see Mason and VCU fighting for the 2, and then there's St. Joe's right there with Dayton, Davidson, and Duquesne.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should have beat them. Go ahead.
Look, had Duquesne beaten St. Joe's, they would be the 4 seed right now, which, you can argue that they probably could have beaten Dayton as well if they didn't give up, 30 transition points as well. But Dayton, talent-wise, should be the 4 seed. Dayton is up there with VCU and George Mason when it comes to just raw talent. But for some reason, things are just not clicking for them. I was there at their game with St. Bonaventure, and they nearly blew that. And for whatever reason, maybe it's the fact that, relying on Javon Bennett to do it all at times is hurting them. Amel Tong hasn't had the breakout campaign that people thought they would at center. So I still think it's up. I still think they're the favorite, but they can absolutely lose the rest some of their key games because they still got St. Louis, they still got VCU, they still got Duquesne as well, and Duquesne nearly won after a place a year ago, and I think in a couple of weeks they're more than capable of doing that as well. So I give the edge to Dayton. I think it's going to be hard for Duquesne to get the tiebreakers that they'll need, but
Right.
because they have the win over George Mason, though, if they can just find a way to get ahead of St. Joe since they don't play again and get the tie Dayton, they would actually have the tiebreaker over them because they'll have the win over George Mason. So, root for St. Joe's lose a couple of games. I think, Davidson, has been solid, but they're not, that good. I still give Dayton the edge, but if Duquesne gets that road win over them, then all of a sudden they can come in the driver's seat.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Dukes don't get to play St. Joe's again to try to get that split. But like you said, the Dukes do get another shot at Dayton, right? And that's coming up February 21st, which is a big game. Next game, of course, at St. Bonnie. Out. Then you got LaSalle game at home on the 18th. The Dukes then travel to Dayton, come home for Davidson. I love that we get to play St. Louis one more time to kind of measure yourself heading into the A10 tournament and have another chance to see a team whom you might end up seeing like in the second round, if things don't work out, or if you get a double bye and you end up playing them maybe like in a championship game or semifinal, like someone hopefully will take care of St. Louis for us, but I didn't hate us against St. Louis at home. That was one of the better games I thought the Dukes had played. So it's nice to be able to get to see them again. Dukes finish their road schedule at Rhode Island on March 4th. And then the final game of the season, regular season, is against Richmond at home on the 7th. And then, of course, you see the A10 championship there, March 11th through the 15th at PPG Paints Arena. The standings work like this. The bottom four teams, if I'm not mistaken, still have to play a first round game. The next group of teams, I think they have a single bye, but it's the top four that has the double bye. And obviously that's where you want to be. But as the Duke showed in 2024, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you win the tournament without getting that double bye. It's just about, getting yourself playing the right kind of ball heading into the tournament, getting all that momentum. I'd hate to see the Dukes take a step back, but right now, I don't know the rest of the tournament, or excuse me, the rest of the league as well as maybe Tristan does. But from what I've seen out of the Dukes, they haven't played a game against anybody where I thought they weren't capable of winning. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if we're going to go 2024 comparison, St. Louis being compared to that Dayton team
Yeah.
is pretty apt, where Duquesne had to play their A game to upset Dayton in that tournament semifinal game. And that was kind of that game, I think, was the real sign that, wow, this team really has some magic in it. So if we're able to pull off that upset in the tournament, in the A10 tournament, then I think the whole league believes that we can take it all again.
Good point.
Outside
Yeah.
of St. Louis, I do think VCU is going to be a little tough. I mean, that was the one game where I felt like they had a lot of answers for us. We might not be a great matchup against them, especially with how they were having a lot of hard ball pressure the entire game. It seemed to cause us a lot of turnover issues, but that was before our defensive fix that we've had recently. So maybe we match up better in the next matchup. I gotta stop saying that same word over and over again. Um, at Dayton, I think we should beat them. I know that's not going to be the national perspective or even the conference wide perspective, but with how we played against them at home and not playing a great game and how Dayton's looked lately, I think that Duquesne should be able to beat them. If we even play a B plus game and they're not playing an A plus game, I think that's a game that we should win. Really, I think it's from a talent perspective and from watching the games played. I really think it's St. Louis, VCU, and then us. Really, from a watching the games and seeing how if everybody's playing their A plus game, who would win. I'd take us third between those three teams.
Yeah, Dayton are losers of their 5 out of their past 6. Dukes have won 3 in a row and 4 out of their past 5. So you certainly like the trends. Rudy, your thoughts on the rest of the schedule coming up?
Well, like I said, I think the worst team that we're facing the rest of the way is LaSalle, I think, with the worst record. St. Bonaventure, we want to get back at them. And obviously Dayton again. We got it tough. I mean, we don't have any gimmies there. They're not losing teams. And so, yeah. So, one thing I wanted to state was that, you know, uh, ever since I can remember, the A10 and the Eastern 8 or whatever was a guard-driven league. Okay, when I was growing up, that was the thing that marked us different than the mid, the high mid majors or
For the Big
the
East,
tournament
like
teams, right?
big
And
physical.
it speaks to logic. You're going to get probably guards, okay, that you're going to be able to develop into the program and to make them better. And so I, I think with the influx of Hall has changed up the makeup of the team. And it's more of a guard, 3 guard team now, if you notice. And of course now we got Williams breaking in with the bigs. So he's alleviating that problem too with Alex. So with the rebounding, I don't know if you noticed, but Alex was the leading rebounder for us this past game. I think he had 8 rebounds or 8, 7. But so yeah, I think he's developed the game into putting Hall in there a little bit more and make it more of a 3 guard offense and defense too.
Tristan, thoughts on that?
Yeah, Coach Drew said, post game a couple weeks ago that Hall is not in there for his offense. He's in there for his defense, and that's given a big lift for Jimmy Williams and Terrence Skinner because you have Hall guarding their top players, and you still have Crawford coming off the bench whenever one of those 2 key guys goes to the bench that he can still guard another key player. And yeah, as Rui said, it's a guards league, and GW even without Rafael Castro was still more than competitive because they still have one of the better backcourts in the league. I mean, Trey Dinkins was always going to be the 4th guard for the Revs when he came in because they already have Trey Autry and Christian Jones and Aaron Gurin, who ended up having the quietest triple double ever because he had a fantastic game. But yeah, even without their big man, GW can still be competitive because they have really good guards. VCU has, I would say, 6 guards that could be in any other team's rotation. They're that deep. St. Louis has a lot of great guards. I mean, Dayton was able to win without their big man because Javon Bennett and Deshae Montgomery was able to outplay Duquesne's guards. But Duquesne this year, they have, the duo of Ginyard and Williams to compete. And they're getting, good minutes from Hall and, DeMichael and Crawford can add some, and you still have Max Edwards available. But right now, I think that Drew wants a backcourt who can defend because no matter what you can do, if you can score 80 points to give up 85, then that's what happens when they play St. Bonaventure at home. They ended up allowing guys to go off on them. So I think the best defensive lineups are going to be what Drew goes with. And that they can score. That as long as Ginger and Williams out there, you can score. Alex Williams can give you some. you have Netchos and Dave Dixon in there. And right now, in league play, Dave Dixon is better for the team than John Hughley, and that's why he's getting more of the minutes and it's working out. So credit to Drew for making those adjustments.
By the way,
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask Tristan, do you believe that Dixon should start, keep him starting, and which is what I claimed before, and
yes.
that he basically the ball moves better with Dixon on the court, from the top of the key all the way around, uh, and uh, and that's what I think is a major impact. What do you think, Tristan?
Yeah, it's weird because in today's game, Dixon, shot six of the team's first eight attempts going after Luke Hunger. It didn't work out, but still, Dixon finished with 17 points. And yet, the ball movement with him and Netshot, because neither of them are necessarily looking to score, works out. Now, there's still a need for Hughley because
Right.
you still want someone to throw the ball to inside to take the pressure off the guards. But in a game like this against, a GW team who could space the floor with all five players on the court capable of shooting, the versatility that Dixon and Netchus offers, that you can put them on the perimeter, was more important. There will still be matchups where you'll want Hughley out there, but right now against some of these teams like Rhode Island and GW, it's better to have Dixon out there. And look, Dixon's going to get into some sort of foul trouble where his minutes are ultimately going to be limited. But Netshot's at the five works as well, and Alex Williams has become the clear guy, to get minutes at the four. So even the plan B lineups can work as well for Drew. And you still have plan C and even plan D, because you still got a 7-footer in Van Bustle who can soak up a couple of minutes for you. And he quietly had a really good couple of games. He was fantastic in the George Mason game when Hughley got into foul trouble and Dixon was in foul trouble as well. So yeah, you're not going to have 12 playable guys all the time, but if you have 12 guys you can pick and choose from time again, and you push the right buttons, you're going to get favorable results.
Boy, yeah,
yeah. One other thing I want to say was that we keep on going about running 8 or 9 in the rotation, dude. Without us being as deep as we are, 10 deep or whatever we are, we wouldn't have won that game, because Alex, basically took over that game. And if we hadn't if he hadn't had the experience of having been out there in the first place, being, running 10 deep, like I was saying, okay, he would have never been even gotten a chance to be off the bench, and he would have been totally lost. So, I keep on harping on this, okay? And I'm going to keep on doing this till you guys go blue in the face and disagree with me. I don't believe that 8 or 9 is the modern way to play your players in the college game. I think that you got to go as deep as you can to give your guys as much playing time as you can, so they stick around.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying. It's time to win now, though. And I'm okay if guys get in foul trouble. That's one thing, but
dude,
I'm a Dixon guy now, as
dude,
long as he can stay on the floor.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
if you look at the rotation today, we got Terrence Ginyard playing 34 minutes, Jimmy Williams playing 33, Brandon Hall playing 30, Alex Williams 26, Netchus 24, David Dixon 22, and then that's the main 6. And then you've got 6 minutes of Hughley. I don't really count that as being in the rotation. Right. Jake DeMichael and Cam Crawford 10, 13 minutes. So we really did have like a mostly 8-man rotation today.
All right.
And it does seem like that's kind of the main thing.
But
So
the game,
as
the
far as
Jordan Mason game
non-conference goes, you
allowed
see
us. It is our depth that 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 put us through on George Mason. I mean, I'm just saying, you
Yeah,
know,
I don't disagree with that part, but yeah, I'm like Nick was saying. I mean, really, like today, you can see that like what 10 guys played, but like three of those guys, well, two of them got 6 minutes or fewer. I like Alex Williams as basically the sixth man. Um, I like the way they're using DeMichael. I know, guys, you know how much of a fan I am of Jake as a person, but he's really kind of found his niche right here with this team. I mean, it's working, and some of the guys you kind of feel bad, like Max Edwards, he's just out. He's not
yeah.
playing.
Encouraging sign even when they made shots to the bench, and when Hall made a 3-point play, one of the first persons off the bench and cheering was Maximus Edwards. So, he's a trooper. It's his last year. I know there's got to be killing him that he's not out there, but
Look, you never know.
he's not. He's taking it like a man, and he's not moping or anything. I
You
just got
never
to
know.
make.
He's on the roster and he's going to stay ready because you really never know, especially when you're playing every day in the A10 tournament, right? So,
Right.
if you go on a run, you're going to need players like him who are able to come in and get minutes. By the way, I'm going to pat myself on the back and gloat about Dave Dixon. We, at the beginning of the year, we picked our starting five. He was my center. I was even with Hughley, being on the team. Now, it was easy to say Hughley's going to be your guy when he got off to such a
Right.
killer start.
So did I.
But what were the and you yeah, but what were the things that we were saying about Hughley? We worried about, can he stay on the team? Can he stay out of trouble, right? And then he had violated team rules and he was off the team for a while, and Dave just took over his spot and never gave it back.
Right.
I'm happy for Dave, and I think that was frankly the right call. We're seeing it clearly play out. I just think Dave he's put himself on the all defensive team in the A10. He's clearly, that's what he does. And I'm glad he's getting the minutes to be able to do it. I know that was a goal of his. I know he said he wanted to be the defensive player of the year. Maybe he won't get that. I don't know, Tristan. Is there anybody else in the conference that's going to edge him out for that? Or not edge him out, but maybe just beat him handily?
Well, Castro GW had a good chance before he got hurt.
Yeah.
That's going to hurt. I mean, Dion Brown is St. Louis. George Mason has a couple. I think Dixon does have a chance, but the problem, and whether it's fair or not, you can put in Adjabor at St. Joe's as well. The problem is Duquesne isn't viewed as a good defense.
Right.
So the best defender on a not very good defense winning the award is probably a stretch.
Yeah,
like the best defender of the best defensive teams, which is George Mason, VCU, though those guys are probably going to get the edge. If we're being realistic about how the vote's going to go.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I'm just such a Dave fan in general. He's a rare breed these days, sticking around, and I love the championship DNA that remains with him and Netchus and DeMichael, right? And some of the bench guys and role players, practice guys who have rings on their fingers, including Drew Joyce. Then when they get to the tournament, it won't be like, hey, we haven't done this before. And you can't, you really can't diminish or you can't poo-poo that experience at all, I don't think. And we get to play this one at home, more or less, at BBG Paints, which is why it's so fun. I'm so excited about it. Guys, any last thoughts on the men before we turn our attention to a couple of the other things in sports? I mean, this is intentionally a big men's basketball episode because of how things are going. How about you, Nick? Any last thoughts on the men's squad?
No, I think we've touched on everything. They're off to a great place, and they get to finally rest, which will be huge for Netchus, who I know was banged up and why he missed the Mason game. So it's a good time to get some rest later on in the season.
Rudy, are we going to lose momentum, though? Right? That's obviously kind of one of the fear.
No, but we need to rest, dude. I mean, come on. Well, let's live off the fumes or whatever that we've created in the last three games.
Tristan, any thoughts on the men's squad that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I mean, 4-1 on the road in league play, including at Davidson, at George Mason. I mean, I know that, some may not be the biggest supporters of Drew Joyce compared to some of the other younger coaches in the league. But in year two, especially after some of the rough patches he had in non-con, it's been a really impressive couple of months for Coach Drew with the decisions he's made and having the team, now legitimately in the mix for a double bye spot.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah.
tough loss for the Duquesne ladies today. Tougher than usual. They remain winless in the A10. The Dukes were leading by 5 with a minute and a half to play after a pair of Alexis Bordas free throws ended up blowing that lead late. Game went to overtime, tied at 61, and then the Dukes lost in the only overtime period on a late layup. This was a game against at St. Bonaventure. Dukes did have a heave from half court that could have won the game, but basically, or I should say it was a short jumper in the paint that beat the Dukes in overtime. So, yeah, tough loss again for the Dukes ladies. They fought a 0-12 in the A10. 7-16 overall would have been a great win against Bonaventure, who's a decent team at 14-11. But boy, you got to feel for the Dukes ladies. There are other opportunities, maybe late in the season, to get some wins. They are playing some teams that are also near or at the bottom of the standings. But it's just been a nightmare, Nick, this season for Dan. I know he's not sleeping well.
Yeah, and I would be curious to see how he would have had a post-game presser today, because obviously it stings to lose in this fashion, and especially with the late lead. But I mean, there's also some encouraging signs there too, because we did have it close late in the game, which has not been the case lately. So when you look into the box score, though, it's really, I mean, Mackenzie Blackford and Lexi Bordas, I think, combined for 40 of the 60 shots that we
Right.
put up. So the offensive, uh, I guess, teamwork is still limited. And I think the team's just looking for any answers they have for what can make it better for next year at this point, which is not the place that you want to be, obviously.
Blackford made 7 threes today.
Right.
It's and that's nice to see, obviously, because they need her to hit. The Dukes ladies will next play. Well, obviously staying in A10 play for the rest of the way. Dukes ladies, everyone makes the tournament. Dukes ladies are going to be, at or near the bottom, but they get a shot Wednesday, the 11th, to pick up maybe their first conference win is going to be against Loyola Chicago. That is UPMC Education Day. That's a really cool atmosphere. That place will be packed with kids. 11 a.m. tip-off at the Cooper Fieldhouse. And then the ladies go on the road Saturday, the 14th at 2 p.m. So next time we have a show, we get to talk about both teams again. Duquesne football team just signed a whole bunch of guys. And so if you are interested in a little bit here, we'll just quickly go through this before we get final thoughts on everything Duquesne athletics. This is the 2026 recruiting class from National Signing Day. Big news really from the recruiting class is that the Dukes did sign a quarterback, transfer quarterback, and that's sort of the way things go in FCS anymore. And this is by the name of Carson Camp. This is the transfer from a bunch of different schools, as you can see. And this is just kind of the way it is in college athletics.
Sacramento State.
Right. This guy has 40 career games played. He's played 5 seasons of FCS football already. And we're almost at the very end of all of the the COVID stuff, right? So this is we're getting to the very end of this now, where seasons didn't count. But this is probably the odds-on favorite to come out of camp as the starting quarterback for the Dukes next year. Clearly, they felt like they had a need they could address through the transfer portal. You feel bad for guys who put their time in and try to serve as a backup and then maybe get the starting reins. It doesn't seem to be the path anymore. Guy comes to the program with experience, maybe from a bigger program or with lots of starts, and it's his job to lose. So it's looking anyway. I can't say officially that Carson Camp might be the guy next season behind center for the Dukes. Not much else going on just right now for athletics, except for swimming and diving is approaching, as we talked about last episode with Dave Sheets on, approaching the A10 championships. But those aren't until February 18th. So we got some time for those. Indoor track and field is also off and running. You got bowling and a few others who are the winter sports that are kicking into high gear, but nothing really upcoming championship-wise except for swimming and diving. Acrobatics and tumbling, though, they're going to have their opener pretty soon. That's really fun. If you haven't been to an acrobatics and tumbling meet, February 12th, this coming Thursday, the Dukes will host West Liberty. That's on ESPN Plus. You can actually stream it, but it'll be at UPMC Cooper Fieldhouse at 6 p.m. And those are really fun. It's a fun spectator sport. It's good for your kids to bring them to. I believe they'll have concessions open. They should anyway. I can't promise that, but after last season realizing they could have it open and sell some stuff, they started to open it up. But that is the Dukes opener for this season. The Dukes are the 7th ranked team in the National Collegiate Acrobatics and Tumbling Association, which is pretty cool because that's a sport that's an NCAA championship sport next season. So maybe as they make their way up through the rankings heading into the championship season of next year, you got a shot, with an NCAA trophy maybe coming to Duquesne. We talked about how it might be bowling, might be acrobatics and tumbling for the Dukes to finally get one of those coveted NCAA Holy Grail wooden plaque and medal championship trophies. So pretty cool sport. If you have a chance to get to Cooper Fieldhouse on Thursday at 6 p.m., go ahead and check them out. Any final thoughts for anything Duquesne athletics? I'll start with Rudy.
Well, keep on keeping on is what I say, and get some rest. Nexus get better, maybe a couple of days off from practice for Nexus. He's a warrior, and just keep on keeping on. That's all I got to say, dude.
Tristan, any last thoughts for Duquesne basketball fans about, what the Dukes can do heading down the stretch, the job you think Drew Joyce has been doing, anything different that you might even recommend?
Yeah, no, I think Drew has things clicking on all cylinders. I think Ginyard and Williams playing, high minutes is what you do with your top players. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens with John Hughley because he's still a good post player, but he's going to have to just figure out how to be a good enough defensive guy. If he can do that and you can get, double-digit points out of him and the bench in total can give you 20 or 30, then all of a sudden I think Duquesne can have kind of firepower to keep up with VCU and St. Louis because as good as an offense Duquesne is, those teams are still better in part because they can just get points easier at times. You don't want Ginyard and Jimmy Williams to have to do everything on the perimeter. So I think that's going to be the big storyline to watch in the next few weeks.
I'm also of the opinion that I'm glad that Hughley will be a guy who helps them get to where they want to be. Although I am riding with Dixon. I'm glad Hughley's back and playing for us. I'm definitely in that camp too. A reminder that you can get Tristan Freeman's content by following him on Twitter at hoopsnut351. Again, he's a site expert for fan-sided's busting brackets. He's also a contributor for at the Field of 68 as well as at Sleepers Media. He's a U.S. Basketball Writers Association member. Tristan Freeman, it was really cool, buddy. You made time for us on All Duke Sports Talk. We really appreciate your time. Sorry about the technical snafus that happened ahead of time that hopefully no one will get to see as Rudy gets to work cleaning that up. Sorry, Rudy. But it meant a lot to us to have you on, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Love to be on again ahead of the A-10 tournament.
Hey, Nick, you get to close this out, man.
All right, now I'm going to share some news that I thought you were going to have, Bob. Greg Gattuso, your coach, coming back.
Right, here's the thing. Okay, I was arguing with people about this. All right, so these are all unnamed sources, right? And, to me, it's not Watergate. What do we do? It's FCS football. Why are we using unnamed sources to try to – I can't confirm. I didn't even text Greg about it. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't even know what Football Scoop is. So until I see this actually happen, you know what I mean?
You're waiting for it to be on the Duquesne website to be official before.
Yeah, I think I kind of am. I just saw Greg, and he was kind of mum about it. And I don't know if being back on campus stimulated any of this conversation or because of the of James Franklin's firing at Penn State, which I assume triggered some sort of buyout for all the assistants too. Greg's a free agent. Clearly, he had incredible success here. He's arguably the most successful football coach in Duquesne history. And if you're not just ranking by pure number of wins, I mean, Greg accomplished amazing things here. And the Dukes do need a defensive coordinator, right? So it's not hard to piece that together. And look, the guy was just on campus. He's being reunited with this atmosphere in Dukes Nation and the university, and he's real nostalgic about it. And the Dukes need a defensive coordinator. But, this guy was in the Big Ten, and I don't know if at this point of his career he wants to go coach in the NEC as an assistant. So until I see it happen, honestly, or I get somebody on the record. I'm not, yeah, no one's on the record for this. So I'm just not trusting it just yet. That's all. That's me. But no disrespect to the reporters who want to put it out there. Um, it just seems to me like unnamed sources for something like this. It's just, I don't know. The capital J journalist in me just struggles with that because, again, we're not dealing with like Watergate here. But I will say, Nick, I would love to see it. I will say that, right? Because I love Greg and he would be wonderful. He'd have to work under Jerry Schmidt. And you wonder about a guy with that kind of, that the resume Greg has and the history he has here. None of the current players are going to think of him as the new head coach because they're all Jerry's guys, obviously. But people who follow the program will, like, the moment the team starts to struggle, will want to get Greg back in there or something. So I don't know what kind of dynamic that would create. But Greg and Jerry are friends, and Jerry used to coach under Greg, and so maybe it's just a relationship where Jerry says, "Hey, we need help on defense, and maybe this is like a retirement job for you. It's way less pressure than the Big Ten." I don't know. Man. It's still a full-time coaching job being a defensive coordinator at Duquesne. Does Greg want to do that at this point? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. All right, then I'll audible to the diving results from earlier today. Apparently, all of them posted zone marks, so they all reached the qualifying standards that they were hoping to do at the meet. So Dave Sheets talked about this being like the last tune-up before the A10s, and it looks like it was a successful meet up in Clarion. So good on Coach Sheets and the crew putting together. Outside of that,
I got my Duquesne swimming shirt on today.
Got your Duquesne swimming shirt on. All right. Outside of that, looking forward to seeing the Duquesne Magic on Education Day and getting that first conference win.
That's right. Well, for Rudy Longreeny, Nick Frost, and our guest this week, Tristan Freeman, we want to thank you again for tuning in to All Duke Sports Talk. Please click the button to like, subscribe, share. We want the traffic. We want everybody to get excited about the Dukes again. It's going to be that tight. It feels like it's time again. So knock on wood. Hopefully it's a fun February and March. Till next time, boys. Shoo, shoo. Rah, rah. Let's go Dukes.
Go Dukes.